Hi, folks. Welcome to another episode of Film Study. This is Ken McCusick. We're here today for another of our Recollections series, taking a break from expectations here for a day. We're going to talk today about Kim Herring, the former strong safety for the Ravens, drafted 58th overall by the Ravens in 1997 in the second round. And yet, the lowest round pick who played on the 2000 Ravens secondary. Joining me to talk about this is Kisuke. Kisuke, how are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
No complaints. Appreciate you picking a player like Kim Herring. It's exactly the sort of unheralded player. What attracted you to talking about Kim Herring?
So I used to play a lot of Madden, but I also just watch a lot of football in general. And I have a couple of friends that like coach like high school football or whatever. They tried to get me to coach with them. I'm like, there's no possible way I can explain what's going on in my brain to a like person trying to like, I'm computing a lot of things at the same time, and I don't know if others are really capable of doing all of that at the same time. So I'll just sit over here and watch you coach. If you want my ideas, I give you my ideas, but I'm tracking like the sun while I'm shadowing this receiver, because wherever the shadow goes is where the ball in there is going to be for the most part. And you can't go anywhere without your waist. So I don't care which way you juke. I'm just going to follow your waist. Things like that. But Kim Herring in particular, I took a liking to him. I took a liking to everybody on the Super Bowl defense, actually, like all 11 starters. But when Kim Herring left the team and Corey Harris came in, I was like, oh, there's a distinct difference between the two. And I don't know if everybody really notices it. As we were saying in the pre-show production meeting, Kim Herring has more range. And then when I went into like looking at his stats and his career, I was like, oh, he's really a free safety that we just put in at strong safety because Rod Woodson took the free safety position. That explains why he has more range. And he's quicker to the ball. It just makes the passes harder to complete. And while Corey Harris was just going to tackle you as soon as you got the ball, but you were going to get the ball.
Very similar defenses in one significant way, and that is when they played cover two, the other teams did not have a big answer to the 23 Ravens. Not all the Ravens defenses have been built that way in terms of being great cover two teams. Some in the Reed years were great single high teams. That just depended on the safety blanket of Ed Reed and his great range to go a long distance. Kim Herring was a good split field safety, and yet for all he could do in terms of getting to the football and being a really good downhill run fitter as well, he did not have a lot of ball production in his career. In fact, he didn't have his first interception until that 2000 season against Jacksonville, so it didn't come until his fourth year. Yeah.
But he did spend a lot of his, I think, first two seasons, he wasn't a starter. He did get game time, but he wasn't a starter. He was listed as a DB. I think he was mostly a special teams player. And, at least the first two seasons. And then he started starting, what was it?
99.
99 was his first year starting.
Might have been 98 at midseason or so, but it's effective. It was 99 when he first got the full season job.
Yes, I believe exactly what it was. So, between that and he's a safety. So for the most part, I don't think you're really throwing at him. So
now, I don't think there are a lot of people who would answer this question correctly if you asked them today, but Kim Herring actually is the guy who had the highest percentage of the regular season snaps for the Ravens defenders on the 2000 team. So even Ray Lewis was pulled a few times in blowouts. Rod Woodson did not play every single moment. Both the cornerbacks missed a little bit of time here and there. Obviously, the entire defensive line is rotational in nature, so nobody could play that. Sharper and was taken out rotationally at times. So Bulware, no, he missed some time. wasn't really close to a full season of play. So the only guy was Kim Herring, who was there pretty much all the time. Lewis was second on the team in terms of percentage of snaps played. So did it surprise you at all that Herring was the one guy who was not returned in 01?
No, because again, I think Corey Harris was just a cheaper option, and it wasn't that far of a drop off of actual play, at least not at the strong safety position. And since they had Rod Woodson in at free safety, you could just literally save some money by having Corey Harris there. Even though I do think there is a drop off, I just don't think it's a significant drop off enough to spend that extra money.
Yeah, I would basically agree with that. I mean, we did talk about this as well a little bit, but Harris was 32 years old in 2001, or turned 32 at some point in 2001, and so it wasn't a young player by any stretch, but he was in the last year of a 4-year deal that was signed extremely cheaply. He acquired very cheap, as 4 years for $2 million or something, which at the time was not much money. And it was a deal where he was brought in a lot to play special teams, but more than that, to play the dime back role for the Ravens, who had really embraced that in their early years under Marvin Lewis. And in 2000, he had one of the great years ever by a Ravens dime back. It really wasn't eclipsed until 2018 when Anthony Levine had the huge year, and then again in 2019 when Clark had the huge year as a dime back. But that 2000 Ravens team played 34.5% of their snaps with either 6 or 7 defensive backs on the field. All of those would have included Harris when they had 6 or 7 on. So he was very important. Lots of highlights from that year. I'm sure we'll get into that. But he also got a chance when Herring got hurt in the postseason to play some. That was an unfortunate thing for Kim Herring to miss time at that point.
Yeah, he didn't play the Oakland game.
Yeah, didn't play Oakland. He got hurt against Tennessee, and he was actually off the field for both of the big plays. So the touchdown and the block field goal.
Yeah, I think injuries is ultimately what finished his career. At least according to the source that I was reading, he missed 2 entire seasons to injury, and the second one that he missed to injury just basically was when he retired.
Or 03 and 05, maybe that would have been then. I see he didn't play in 03.
Yeah, he got injured, I believe, once with the Rams, and then they didn't bring him back, or they cut him, and then he got injured again with the Bengals.
Mm-hmm. The Rams moved him back to free safety. It looks like I don't have actual snaps by position at all, but that's his listed position on the Pro Football Reference. And then with the Bengals, doesn't surprise me that they brought him back when Marvin Lewis became head coach there.
Yeah, the Rams moved him back to free safety, and I think the Bengals actually moved him back to strong safety.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. Well, he came back into Super Bowl 35. I don't want to spoil it because that's where he had some of his really great moments of 2000. Do you want to talk about some of the individual plays or anything else about his style of play that you want to talk about? What I liked about Kim Herring the most was it was just more difficult to throw into like his range. So he didn't have to necessarily be shadowing the receiver. If it was just in a range that he could get to, it made the throw more difficult, which I was like, I would prefer that over what Corey Harris would provide. Mm-hmm. I would prefer just, the threat, minus whatever he might have actually been doing at the time. I was like, I prefer the threat. I prefer the possible pass deflection or interception, as opposed to the shorthanded tackle as soon as the guy gets the ball. I'd rather the guy not get the ball. So I prefer Corey Harris. Kim Herring and his style of play or the limitations of a Corey Harris. Maybe it was age. Maybe it was just Kim Herring was faster and more rangy in the first place. But I definitely preferred Kim Herring to Corey Harris in that respect. Kim Herring was also good at tackling. I'm not going to take that away from him. I just thought he was more rangy and made it more difficult to get those passes off. Right. And by the way, we would expect that. I mean, Corey Harris was a undrafted, a guy who was available in free agency for a cheap vet, probably was vet min at the time, but not much more than vet min because it was a 4-year deal. And, Kim Herring had been a 2nd-round draft pick just the year before when they acquired the 2 players, 97 and 98 respectively. So I guess it's not really surprising what they did. I liked Kim Herring's second man to the ball skills very well. I thought he was very special in that regard. He had 3 forced fumbles, 3 fumble recoveries in his career. And they talked about the 11 billiard balls in 2000, was what Ray Lewis had talked about their defense being. He was very much one of those guys who would get their second, try and jar the ball loose or pick it up if somebody else had. And it's a good complementary skill, much like the Ravens pass rush this last season. You get value from a lot of people thinking similarly in terms of how they approach a ball carrier who's got one man on it.
Yeah, it's one of those things that I never forgot. Marvin Lewis said this. I don't know if he said it during the Super Bowl year or if it was the year after, but I think it was during the Super Bowl year. He liked having interchangeable safeties. And I was like, oh, that's cool. I never hear at least at the time, I never really hear defensive coordinators say that. And I
say it all the time now. It pisses me off. But yeah. When I hear that today, usually to me it means, that means you got to have 2 strong safeties. You don't have a free safety. Now, in the case of the Ravens, obviously in 2000, that really wasn't true. They had 2 guys who could play free safety. They had Corey Harris, who was a great dime back. They had versatile safeties who could move back and not just play downhill. But a lot of times when I hear that today, it means, okay, that means you don't have enough free safeties on this team. Kind of a problem for me still going into the 2024 season for the Ravens is a lack of a second free field, split field safety who will, allow Hamilton to come up to the line of scrimmage.
Yeah, I listened to the show. This is the second time I've actually done one of these with you. I'm kind of surprised they didn't bring Worley back, unless he has like some lingering injury. Because I haven't really heard his name in any circles, and I'm like, did he retire? Like, what happened?
He better not have retired after how well he was playing last year. That would be a waste. He'd moved to safety. It looked like he'd assimilated well. It's got to be injury related, I would think. And maybe it's the case where the Ravens they know where he is injury wise, and they're ready to sign him. They're not ready to put a red flag out for everybody else, and they can have one extra guy in camp until then.
Yeah, it might be something that's easy to fit in like that.
Yeah. So Herring's teams had a 6-1 combined record in the postseason. That included the 2001 Rams and their eventual Super Bowl loss. But they, obviously 4-0 with the 2000 Ravens as well. So very impressive career in terms of being around winners, at least from that perspective.
I don't have his stats up right now, but I did, look at them before we did this. I think for the seasons that he was on the field, he had a really good career. I think it was the injuries that ultimately did him in.
He played for good defenses, certainly in Baltimore, and then really again in St. Louis as well. Those defenses were fine. And he played in a 4-year period from 99 to 2002. He started all but 1 game. So he wasn't really plagued with injuries, so to speak. It wasn't until after, I guess it would have been the preseason or camp in 2003 that his injury must have occurred. That kept him out of some significant time.
I think it was in preseason from what I read. If I think the Rams one was in preseason, and then the Cincinnati one was preseason.
Before preseason, you're saying? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. How about some individual highlights? What do you remember about his individual highlights career?
I know he had an interception in the Super Bowl. Was it off a pass deflection?
Yeah. So a couple of things happened in the Super Bowl. The first was he got his hands on the very first 2 passes of the game, and there was no PD credited, I believe, on either one. But I've watched that tape a million times. And the first thing I'm saying is Corey Harris is getting an interception today. When the very first 2 passes of the game are both misfired, and he was the closest thing to an intended receiver on either play, it looked like. But then the first drive of the second half, they ended the interception with that. And I don't remember if that was deflected, maybe deflected. Sharper had a deflection off Lewis. I'm trying to think who was deflected to Herring. And I don't remember that.
That I don't know. I probably should have just kept the page up that I was referencing. But I closed it out before we started.
Yes. Right. No problem. I've got a few other highlights. What else do you want to talk about?
I don't really remember like individual highlights. I just really just tracked like his actual play and his influence on the offense. So
Right.
for the that's how I like look at every Ravens game. Actually, like throughout the years, I'll follow the actual play and be like, oh, this person affected this, or this person wasn't where they were expected to be. Things like that. But I don't usually remember individual plays unless it was really jarring.
Okay. All right. Well, a couple. The one I remember that maybe got more talked about at the time is during that Jacksonville time when the Ravens game in week 2, Ravens are making that furious comeback after a terrible first half where they trailed by as much as they trailed 23-7, maybe 23. I think it's 23-7. Then they cut it to 23-15 at the beginning of the second half. Anyway, he had an interception. It was the first interception of his career. And I think Dick Enberg was doing the game with Deerdorf. And he as soon as he got the interception, he said, that's the first interception of Kim Herring's career. And I thought, wow, he's been around for 4 years. That's surprising that happened. But it was one of the big plays in that win, in that comeback.
I'm just happy that he actually knew that.
Yeah, it's this is a thing from broadcasting. How that will work is the announcer has a 10x10 sheet in front of them of information on every uniform number for each team, and you'll occasionally see them referring wrong to it. It's a big no-no to refer wrong, but they have a 10x10 grid, and on number 20, they had no career interceptions to date. Would have been his notation on that, but it's a little piece of inside broadcasting there. That's how that is generally done. It may be done. There may be different ways that people do it today, but Enberg, really old school guy, obviously from that era, he would have used the old 10x10 card from then to put his notes on players, and I think that's fairly common to have notes about various players that you're referring to, because it's got to be available immediately as soon as you identify the uniform number. And that's what you want it by. You don't want to look up the uniform number on some roster, find out who the player is, and go back to your notes on the player. So they have it in this grid format.
And to be able to rattle it off like it was your own knowledge and you weren't reading it is actually like really good too.
Yeah. If you prepare for a show of any type, including like this one, we do, you'll have certain bits of knowledge you prepared for the show, and so you end up rattling it off. But yeah, you're right. It's something that they have the production meetings of their own, that they talk to the coaches and a couple of players the day before the game, and they do have an opportunity to ask some questions of the coach. They usually don't get into minutia like that. That came directly out of the media guide. I guarantee you, they didn't ask Brian Billick a question about why hasn't Kim Herring had an interception yet. That wasn't anywhere near the top of their list of things to talk about.
Yeah, it's just really cool. Kind of reminds me of like acting, or I outside of football stuff. I've actually been a recording artist for quite some time, and sometimes I don't know the bars. I have it written in front of me while I'm in a booth, and I'm literally reading off of it while we're recording. It sounds better when I know the bars.
Yep.
But only me and other lyricists, for the most part, can tell that I'm reading off of paper.
Huh.
It'll bother me listening to it later. I'll be like, that could have been so much smoother. But to the layman, it sounds about the same.
One of the tricks, I have a broadcasting degree originally from Syracuse, but one of the tricks they always told us was, if you're going to read copy cold, and that's going to happen, you're eventually going to get you're going to get past copy that you have to read cold on air from time to time. Try and stay half a line ahead of what you're reading. And occasionally what will happen is there'll be a phonetic word in there that has to be spelled out for you. And when you write a script for an anchor or whatever, you have that all down there, and phonetic pronunciations of difficult to pronounce places and people, they get dropped in there, but you're supposed to stay a half line ahead. And then when you have your oh shit moment of how do I pronounce that thing, you've got the phonetic spelling after it that you can then rely on and just sound out the word kind of thing. But good people, they read cold copy like it's live. Sorry, like they wrote it themselves. Yeah.
I have found when I'm reading it's because I wrote it, but I have found when I'm reading them that I will often change words that make it difficult for me to say. I'm like, oh no, we're gonna change that. I'll just do a automatic edit and continue on. And then I got to remember, if we got to run it through again, that I changed these words. It's not what's written down anymore because it wasn't working for me to just spew it out and stay on beat. So,
all right, that's cool. That's some good insights into that. What else I want to say? He had a fumble recovery in the last game played at Memorial Stadium, that 21-19 win over the Oilers. He was a big part of the Ravens' 4-game winning streak in 1999. We talked about that. The episode with Cadre, by the way, I'd really highly recommend folks go back to. It talks about the 4-game winning streak in general, which included the Cadre Ishmael 3-touchdown, 258-yard game against the Steelers. During that streak, Herring was one of the key defenders with he had 4 PDs and 1 in each of those games. So that was a nice little run for him that kind of solidified, I think, what he was going to be for the Ravens at that point. And then the last game of the season in 2000, the 34-20 win over the Jets, 4 PDs in that game. That's exceptionally rare for any defender to get 4 PDs in a game. We saw Ray Lewis do it in the Super Bowl. We've seen it happen a few other times. And the Ravens record is actually 7 in a single game. But the number of times 4 has occurred is probably still less than 30 times, I'm going to say, in Ravens history. So it's unusual when it happens and really worth noting.
Yeah, it's a real demonstration of the range that he had to get his hands on the ball. Prevent that completion.
Well, Kisuke, great having you on for this. What are any other closing thoughts on Kim Herring? You never met the guy or anything? Never?
No, never met him. The only Ravens defender I met from that Super Bowl was actually Tony Siragusa.
Okay.
And he came into I used to work at a knife and sword shop called Chesapeake Knife and Tool. It was located in the Towson Mall. And he came in and he literally wanted the cheapest deer skinning knife that we had. And I was like, it's going to fall apart though. And he was like, no, don't try to sell me. And I'm like, I'm trying to save you because this isn't a good knife. Like, you really actually want this other knife. I know it's a little more expensive, but it's actually just better quality. And he's like, no, give me the cheapest one. I'm like, all right, give me the cheapest one.
No, it's good that he's a value hunter. It's good that all players are a little bit of value hunters. I'd like to see it, but
yeah, I met him.
Tony definitely splashed some cash around at bars and whatnot.
Actually, no, I also met Chris McAllister at a different store that I worked at Arundel Mills. I met Chris McAllister, and that's all from the 2000s team. Those only 2 players I've met, and then I met Terrell Suggs at another point in time.
All right. Well, very cool. Excellent choice. Really appreciate talking about Kim Herring with you. Why don't we tell folks where they can talk football with you online?
So the best place to talk football with me online is probably on Instagram, but I don't remember that handle right now. If you want to talk to me, just face_off@me.com is the best way to reach me. Okay. I have so many different handles. So
and you don't really check your Twitter at all where your face-off battles?
I almost never check Twitter. So I only use my Twitter to so it does update on my phone. So I'll see when people say things, but there are so many phony accounts on X. And I finally figured out how to block a lot of them because I'll get false news and think, oh, we just got this new player. No, we didn't. So I'm like, yeah, I don't really like X anymore because you have to literally pay them to not get bombarded with fake accounts. And I'm like, I'm not going to give you money so you just give me worthy news. I'll just go to a different source.
Not getting fake accounts is one thing. Getting worthy news, that's a higher bar still. That's a really difficult one. So, all right. Well, Kisuke, appreciate having you on. And I hope folks will, in giving a listen to this, will look for him again on these episodes because I'm sure he'll be back. Other folks out there, if you'd like to be on a Film Study Short, hit me up. DMs are always open on Twitter. I'm looking right now for a Concerns series. So that'll be on end of July. right before camp, we're going to be talking about what are the concerns on the for the 2024 Ravens entering camp. It won't be much more than this that I'll talk about it maybe a couple more times, but I am looking for those. Just DM me if you have a particular concern. I'll get right back to you in terms of how we can set that up and schedule it. Kisuke, thanks again for coming on.
Likewise. Well, I appreciate it.
We'll talk to you next time on Film Study.